Now, never in the history of mankind have human beings consumed so many carbohydrates. High carbohydrate consumers. Would you agree with me? These are things that are consumed in large amounts. It is estimated that cereal today is sometimes 30% sugar. And is estimated by the age of 3, about 1 in 3 American children are overweight. And it is also estimated on the figures that 93% of American children start the day with cereal. So considering each one of you, would you agree with me, looking at your neighbours, your families, your friends, and it's so popular because it's just there. There's no preparation at all. And it has a lot to do with the high carbohydrate diet. The cereal is a main part. So what have we got? We've got cereals and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea, cookies, cakes, pretzels, mid, during. Would you agree with me? Yep. That's right. Now, looking at these carbohydrates, a lot of them are made out of wheat. So the cereal, the bread, the cakes, biscuits, we call cookies biscuits. Cookies, pretzels, all made out of wheat. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you why wheat is playing such a large role in diabetes. In about the 1950s, wheat was put through intensive crossbreeding to produce a plant with a high yield to save the starvation crisis in Mexico, in Africa, in India. The problem was when the wheat was this high with the high yield, before the grain fully ripened, the stalk would break and the plant would die. So back to the drawing board. So eventually they came up with a plant that only grows about this high, has a thick stem, and it can hold the high yield. Dr. Norman Bullag in 1969, notice the timing, 1969, he got a Nobel Prize for his hybridized wheat. Now, no one complains about the helping with the starvation crisis, but what was never addressed was the effect of this hybridized wheat on the human body. Now, in that hybridized wheat, what was created was a starch called amylopectin A. Now, amylopectin A is the starch that is found in the hybridized wheat, and it gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast, and then you always get a corresponding dump, and that is what our pancreas does not like. It's actually, no cell in the body likes it, because up here you've got overload of glucose, and down there you've got a depletion. Let me give you something to compare it with. Amylopectin B is found in bananas and potatoes, and if you are familiar with the glycemic index of foods, bananas and potatoes get the blood glucose level up fairly high. The glycemic index of foods is how quickly the glucose in the food gets released into the bloodstream. So amylopectin B found in bananas and potatoes, that gets the blood glucose level up not quite as high and not quite as fast, and thus not quite as low. If I'm quick, I can get away with it. Amylopectin C is found in garbanzos, lentils, lima beans, all your legumes. What does it do? It gets a nice steady high and a nice steady low. And that's exactly what every cell in the body likes. It's what the pancreas loves. See, all of these foods, as soon as they get in the blood, they're broken down to glucose. And when they're broken down to glucose, as I showed you last night, then they get into the blood. Then they go to the project manager, the liver, and the liver sends it first of all to the cell to be burnt as fuel. Now I'm going to go inside the cell, I call it inside the CBD, and show you what happens. So the glucose comes in, and it comes in under the action of insulin. and it goes through a 20-step pathway. Now this 20-step pathway gives us, doesn't like it, 2 units of energy. And isn't that why we eat? Because this food breaks down to glucose, goes into the blood, to the liver, sends it to the cell. Now the end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. Pyruvate is the chemical form of glucose that gets fed into the 8-step pathway. And that 8-step pathway gives us a whopping 36 units of energy. Whoa, that's exciting. What makes the difference? It's oxygen. No oxygen up here. It's important to understand this to understand diabetes, so bear with me. Now this is every single cell in the body except for the blood cell, because the red blood cell, it's the carrier of the oxygen, the carrier of this glucose to the CBD, which is the central business district of the human body. And it is the pancreas that releases the insulin to get the glucose inside the cell. Now, on a high carbohydrate diet, we have still got a lot of glucose left over. And so now the liver stores some as glycogen. Glycogen is a name given to quick release glucose stores. Now these glycogen stores are very, very important in the diabetic, as you will see. Now it's like a little bunch of grapes that gets stored in each, basically a muscle cell. Because when you start exercising, and the best time to exercise is early in the morning, because if you exercise after you've eaten, your body's energies will want to go to digestion. And your working muscles that are getting you up the hill are saying, we need it. And the stomach says, no, we need it. So the best time to exercise is before breakfast. Well, where are you going to get the energy? You haven't eaten yet, especially if you ate last night. Yesterday, my main meal happened about 1:30, and I didn't eat again till breakfast. So where does the energy come from? Your glycogen stores. They're like little molecules of glucose. Well, they are little molecules of glucose, but it's like a little bunch of grapes already sitting in your muscle cell. Now, on a high carbohydrate diet, we have still got lots of glucose left over, and so now the liver causes it to be stored as fat. They're the 3 places that the glucose gets sent. And as you can see, on a high carbohydrate diet, there's often a lot of glucose left over. That is the most dangerous fat in the body. You've heard of triglycerides. You've heard of triglycerides and the link between high triglyceride levels and heart disease, strokes. That high triglyceride levels are not coming from the fat we eat. Can you see where they're coming from? That high carbohydrate diet, the liver's got no choice. Only so much can be put through the energy cycles. Only so much can be stored. The rest has to be stored as fat. And it starts with the inactive parts in the body, like the thighs, the buttocks, the stomach, the arms. And when they get full, then it starts dumping it on the internal organs, weighing them down. And you can see with the starch, like amylopectin A, which is found in the hybridized wheat, getting the blood sugar level up extremely high, extremely fast. The only thing the liver can do is to dump it. Only so much can go through the energy cycle in the cell. Only so much can be stored as glycogen. The rest has to be stored as fat. Thus, Dr. William Davis's book is called Wheat Belly, because he shows the wheat breaks down to a particular type of fat called visceral fat. He said it goes on the internal organs, pushing the belly out, and then it dumps specifically on the belly, pushing the belly out. In fact, in his book, Wheat Belly, just about every page is the term wheat belly. It's a fascinating book. Now what I want to show you, now that I've shown you about the amylopectin A, the starch found in the hybridized wheat, and how it gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast. The amylopectin B found in bananas and potatoes, quite a quick rise, but not quite as high as the amylopectin A. And of course, the higher they go, the bigger the dump. And then amylopectin C is the type of starch found in legumes, chickpeas, lima beans, black-eyed peas, garbanzos. And that is the blood sugar level that your body loves. Every cell in the body loves. The pancreas loves. There's no crisis. It's a steady, consistent delivery of fuel. Now let's have a look at this in relation to the glycemic index. Glycemic index is how quickly the glucose gets released into the blood. So your baseline is 55. Anything under 55 is considered low GI. Let me give you a couple of illustrations. Cherries, 26. Grapefruit is 25. So there are two fruits that are excellent for diabetics, because it's not going to get the blood sugar level up high. Sugar, whether it be white, whether it be brown, whether it be tan coloured, whatever it be, it has a glycemic index of 59. And we're not surprised. Refined wheat, so that's white bread, white pasta, 69. Huh? 69? So this refined wheat gets the blood sugar level up higher and quicker than sugar. Whoa. I'm glad you're sitting down for the next pieces of information, because it's shocking. Wholemeal wheat gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast, 72. And what are diabetics told to eat? Wholemeal, whole grain bread, whole grain cereal, whole grain pasta. Why does wholemeal wheat get the blood sugar level up quicker than refined wheat? It's because it's got more amylopectin A in it. Because it's not refined, it's got more of that starch in it. And that amylopectin A is the starch that gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast. So, Sister Barbara, are you saying that white bread's better than brown bread? No, I'm not saying that. Obviously, wholemeal is going to give you a little bit of fibre and not clog up your colon. I'm just showing you. I'm just giving you the facts on the glycemic index. Now, I presented this one day at our health retreat, and a lady began to cry. I said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "I'm a type 2 diabetic." She said, "I was diagnosed 2 years ago." She said, "I do everything I'm told. I have wholemeal pasta, wholemeal bread, wholemeal cereal. And every 6 months I go to the doctor and he puts me on more insulin." What's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. She said, "I'm crying tears of frustration because I'm doing everything they're telling me. And it's getting worse." She said, "I am crying tears of joy because you've just solved the puzzle." It's the hybridized wheat. No wonder in Australia we've got 400 new diabetics being diagnosed every day. And I know that America would be no different to that. So as I go through these explanations of why diabetes is out of control, I'm going to make a list of how you can turn diabetes around. So number 1, stop the hybridized wheat. So what do we eat? Let's go down to about 5. What you eat is a high vegetable diet. Remember this, vegetables are high in fibre, high in minerals, low in sugars. Fruit is high in fibre, high in sugar, low in minerals. So when you're looking at turning this around, initially, very little of the fruit. And if you have fruit, it's low GI fruit. And it's not hard to get a glycemic index chart. Generous amounts of protein. You will find on the glycemic index that lentils, garbanzos, lima beans, black-eyed beans, cannellini beans, kidney beans, so many legumes. We should eat them every day. They are very nice level on the glycemic index. So what's your protein? Protein is your legumes. One man said to me he went to a health retreat in America 10 years ago as a diabetic, and he said, I was told that I had to eat legumes, lots of them. He said, I did. It's 10 years later now, and he's on no medication and managing well. Nuts and seeds. These three are high, I meant to say high fibre there. High fibre, which is high vegetables, generous proteins, and your healthy fats. So what are your good fats? Nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut oil, coconut in all its forms, and olive oil. And very low carbs. So the carbohydrates that are low GI are millet, oats, and quinoa. And for your bread, you can go spelt. And spelt and kamut are wild hybrids of the original wheat. So it's basically what wheat used to be like. So they're the foods. It is that diet that will help to balance the blood glucose levels in the body. If you want to read on this a little bit more, Dr. William Davis's book Wheat Belly, he goes into detail on the amylopectin, the different starches. Yeah.
Is the sourdough bread still good?
Yeah, always sourdough. What sourdough does is it breaks down the protein or the gluten in the grain and makes it more digestible. It actually also increases the protein content of it. And because it breaks down the gluten structure, it actually lowers the carbohydrate content. And that's, of course, what you're looking for. You've heard of the paleo diet, the FODMAP diet, you've heard of Atkins diet. Basically, it's that sort of a diet. But it's a vegetarian diet. And let me show you how you can do the paleo diet vegetarian, because there's no doubt about it. The Atkins diet and the paleo diet conquer diabetes and conquer it very quickly. So we're going to have a look at the food. We're going to have a look at the protein content and the carbohydrate content, because as you can see from this list, this high carb is actually a big contributing factor to diabetes. And we're going to go to Genesis 1:29, where God tells Adam and Eve what to eat. And God said, behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth. What's a herb-bearing seed? A grain is a herb-bearing seed, and a legume is a herb-bearing seed, and a seed is a herb-bearing seed. So what about grain? Well, we've got wheat, rye, barley, oats, amaranth, buckwheat, quinoa. Grains are high in protein, but they are quite high in carbohydrate. How many on our carbohydrate list are from grain? Cereal, bread, cakes, pretzels, pizza, pasta, right. So it's a high carb diet is usually from the grain department. What about legumes? What's a legume? Chickpeas, lima beans, what do you call it? Garbanzos, black-eyed beans, lentils, soy. Soy's only a problem if it's been genetically modified. High in protein and medium to low in carbohydrates. Now you'll find in the FODMAP diet, have you heard of the FODMAP diet? I've met people who've had huge change in the FODMAP diet, but the FODMAP diet damns legumes. It says that they cannot be digested in the human gut. That's because the human gut that can't digest them isn't working well. So all we need to do is listen to the lecture I gave yesterday on how to restore proper gut function, and then the legumes can be handled. Most people suffer some wind or flatulence with legumes because they don't rinse them enough. Ideally, you soak them and then you cook them in a pot after you've rinsed them, and in another pot you have a nice rich sauce cooking. And when the legumes are 3/4 cooked, rinse them, rinse them. You see the colour of the water. What's the colour of the water? Grey. There's your wind. Got that? You rinse that away, and then you put your legumes into your lovely rich sauce and let that cook for about another half hour. That's the way to eat legumes, and you won't have a problem. If you still have a problem, you probably need to listen to the lecture last night and learn how to boost your hydrochloric acid, your digestion. Seeds. What's a seed? In a seed, we've got chia seed, flaxseed, or flaxseed or linseed, same seed, sunflower, pumpkin seed. Seeds are high in protein and they are quite low in carbohydrate. And God said, behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree, in the which of the trees a fruit-bearing seed. Fruit-bearing seed is a nut. So nuts, we've got almond, Brazil, hazelnut, cashew, walnut, pecan nut, so many nuts, macadamias. Nuts are high in protein, low in carbohydrate. And that's why this is the diet that works. Because in this diet here, you're consuming more legumes, seeds and nuts and less grain. You see, your legumes are about 1/3 the carbohydrate content that you will find in your grain. Changing the diet makes a massive difference. A lot of people eat the carbohydrates to fill themselves up, but the fact is it doesn't. It gives a quick high and then a corresponding low. Yes?
What do you do? Because I've been doing the vegetables and all that stuff, but I've lost a lot of weight and I don't want to lose weight. I want to get it.
The only time you lose weight is if you're not eating enough protein. And Dr. Atkins showed this very, very clearly. He said, if you're eating adequate protein, you will never lose muscle. So what I do is I eat legumes every meal and I eat nuts and seeds every meal. And I don't lose the muscle and I don't lose the weight. I just stay the same. So that's often the missing link, is the protein. And when people go vegetarian, they often become protein deficient. One lady said to me, you're right. She said, a year ago, my family and I decided to become vegetarian, become healthy. She said, we've all lost so much weight. We've got no energy. I said, what are you eating? Pasta, bread, cereal, rice. Aha. So that's often the missing link, and is the protein. In fact, if you're unable to have legumes every meal, sometimes it's a good idea to end the meal with a protein shake. And you can get some excellent protein powders now. I was looking at one when we were in Denver at the health retreat there, I looked at what they had and it was made out of quinoa, buckwheat, sunflower seeds. And one we use at our health retreat is a pea protein. So it's made out of, I think, dried legumes. So there's many different protein powders you can get now. We were using a brown rice one for a while, but it was a little bit gritty. So it's just actually playing with it till you find one that you like. The other thing, yes? What do you mix with the protein? I'll give you a very quick, great protein drink. And a lot of people who are busy in the morning and love their cereal because they don't have time to do anything else, they can make a protein drink. 1 cup of coconut water. Or you could use almond milk or organic soy milk. And then you do, say, 2 teaspoons. I say dessert spoon, but I'm told in America you don't know what a dessert spoon is. It's actually 2 teaspoons, so we'll just say 2 teaspoons. 2 teaspoons of a protein powder. 2 teaspoons of coconut milk. I say cream, but I think in America you even call your coconut creams coconut milk. That gives a bit of creaminess to it. And then you might have 1/2 cup of berries. And then you might have 2 teaspoons, back to 2 teaspoons of chia seed and 2 teaspoons of ground flax. Does that sound yum? It is. The only problem where you get with food combining, and you'll often hear it, you shouldn't combine starch and protein. Well, as you saw from the chart I just gave you there, all vegetarian protein is a combination of starch and protein. You can't get away from it. Now, where you'll find people talk about the problem is when it's steak and, I was going to say chips, but you call them French fries, yeah? Or a burger on a bun. So it's raw, it's more meat protein with the carbohydrates. They all digest together. It is true that the fruit will digest quicker, but that's not a problem. The only things I do not combine is fruit and vegetables. Now, some people will put green leaves in this. You've heard of the green smoothie? But green leaves are fine because they're considered a herb. Got that? I don't mix fruit with vegetables, no. So I don't have potatoes at one meal with grapes for dessert. That doesn't combine very well. So what would you have for dessert? Well, we had a nice dessert today, and it was a chia pudding in a coconut milk. That's very nice. That's a very nice dessert. So now, how would you know that works? You'll know that works because you don't get hungry until lunchtime. If you're getting hungry before lunchtime, maybe you'll put a bit more flax in it, because there are 3 food groups that keep the food in the stomach longer, and that's protein, it's fibre, and it's fat. And these are actually the 3 essential food groups. Protein is essential because 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is protein. It's essential. Your body cannot heal without protein. 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is fat. It's essential. Your sex hormones are made from cholesterol, which is partly made from fat. Fat is an essential nutrient, and the fattiest organ in the body is the brain. And it loves fat. You know, the fat phobia that's been over America for about 30 years now, it's time to break it. It's not true. The only dangerous fat is the stored fat from too many carbohydrates. And when you see yogurt, 100% fat-free, what have they done to it? And what's it going to taste like? And so what are they going to do to it to make it taste nice? Sugar. The person's far better to eat full fat than have no fat with a sugaring. Can you see that? In fact, one writer said he thinks it's going to take a whole nother generation to get this fat phobia out of the brain. Fat doesn't make you fat. There is a dangerous fat, and that is altered fat, found in your margarines and also frying. Fibre is an essential nutrient because fibre sweeps the colon, fibre stimulates peristalsis in the colon. It is in the fibre part of food that you will get a concentration of a lot of your minerals and vitamins. But the non-essential food group, and this may surprise you, is carbohydrates. Now let me define this. Carbohydrates are not bad. What a relief. We like them. It's only when they're overdone and refined. Got that? Only when they're overdone and refined. If I didn't serve potatoes at the main meal, I'd have a very unhappy husband. But potatoes are high on the glycemic index, so if you're diabetic, don't have 3 potatoes, have a small one and have some sweet potato. Because sweet potato, all your wild yams, they're much lower on the GI. It's just changing the ratio a bit. And that is why I say your carbohydrates are your negotiating part of the meal. And the negotiations change depending on your age, your size, your weight, your height, your physical, mental output through the day. How do you know if you're having the right amount of carbohydrates? You're the right weight, you got energy, all is good. Body will speak to you. But as you can see, overdoing the carbs means the body is forced to store it as fat. Now your pancreas, I'll draw it up here. Here's pancreas underneath your left rib. And your pancreas releases insulin to get the blood sugar level down. And it releases glucagon to get it up again. So on a high carbohydrate diet, too much is released. I'll show you. So high glucose demands the release of high insulin. And then it goes too low. And then the body says, crisis, quickly, stop the insulin, release the glucagon. But what does the person usually do when their blood sugar goes low? I need a shake, I need a lolly, a candy you call it, I need a Mars bar. Will that get it up? Oh yes. Boom! And then the body goes, oh no, we're too high. Stop the glucagon, release the insulin. Boom. But something else happens. When you've got this high insulin, it's trying to get it into the cell, trying to get it in the cell. And what's happening is, this is full, the cell says, I'm sick of the sight of you. So insulin resistance develops. You've heard of it? And the glucose is still running around the blood. And the brain says, we need more insulin. Quick, more insulin. We don't need more insulin. We've already got enough, but it can't get in because of insulin resistance. And then it starts to leak out the urine. Do you know what diabetes mellitus means? Sweet urine. And then eventually the pancreas says, I'm done, I've had enough, I've got nothing left. And there's your diabetes. I'll tell you the story of Dan. Dan came to us at the age of 20, type 1 diabetic. He'd had diabetes since the age of 15. He had a course of strong antibiotics, and the side effect was it damaged the beta cells in his pancreas. So at 15, from a course of strong antibiotics, because of a chest cold, when all he really needed to do was have some high doses of garlic and vitamin C and lemon drinks and go to bed, yeah? Do what our grandmothers did. And he came to our retreat. He was holding a bit of excess weight. Do you see, insulin has a one-track mind. I must store, I must store, I must store. So he was on short and long-acting insulin morning and night. First week, he was with us 4 weeks. When he woke up in the middle of the night and had a blood sugar level low, he took a candy. That would get it up very quick, very fast, and give him a headache. But he could go back to bed. Second week, if he got a blood sugar level low, and why is he getting a blood sugar level low? He's on too much insulin. You see that? Because that's what insulin does, gets it down. Second week, he decided to eat an apple. He's very quiet. Boy, I didn't know what was happening. Takes a long time to eat an apple in the middle of the night. Third week, after hearing the lectures, he decided to, if he had a blood sugar level low in the middle of the night, he'd get up and do push-ups, 20 push-ups. Blood sugar level would come to normal and he'd go to bed. Where did that come from? His glycogen stores. And you know what he said to me? Why didn't anyone tell me about glycogen? Quick release glucose stores already in the cell, just waiting to be called on. By the end of the third week, he had dropped his insulin by 90%, type 1 diabetic. And he'd been told his pancreas was dead. I said, is it gangrene? What's dead? If there is blood going through that pancreas, it's alive. It just needs the right conditions. Why was Dan's blood sugar level going so low in the middle of the night? Because he was on too much insulin. What we were feeding him was this. William Duffy in the book Sugar Blues, he says, insulin keeps diabetics alive long enough to give birth to baby diabetics. Scary. Most people are sick through ignorance, especially when you realise most diabetics are told to have wholemeal bread, wholemeal cereal, wholemeal pasta, and they're not getting better. The body can heal itself. I see this happen in people within a few days at our health retreat. Sometimes within 48 hours, they're seeing results. That's incredible, isn't it? The other thing is, stop the dairy. Why dairy? Cow's milk's excellent milk for baby calves. Now, it is true that some people that have dairy in their heritage can handle it. I've got a friend who's got an orphanage in Nakuru, Kenya, and they get Maasai orphans in. You know what the Maasais eat a lot of and always have? A lot of cow's milk. And he said these little Maasai children often don't do very well, and they've got a cow, and they milk the cow and give it to the Maasai children, and they start to respond. Because it's in their heritage. They have the genes that can handle the cow's milk. I'm a 5th generation Australian Scottish descent. I can't handle cow's milk. When I was a little girl, we used to get milk at school. It just made me feel ill. But I had to drink it because they said you have to drink it because you want strong bones. You know, Harvey Diamond in his book Fit for Life, he claims that it's the dairy products that are causing the osteoporosis because we don't have 5 stomachs to access that calcium. And the countries in this world with the highest amounts of osteoporosis are the highest milk consumers. What about the Maasai? Well, the Maasai are eating raw milk, not pasteurized, not homogenized, and also they have just developed genes and enzymes in their guts that they can handle it. So I do acknowledge that there are some that can handle it, but most can't. But you know, milk is for babies. It's not for adults. So when human beings take in this cow's milk, which has been homogenized and pasteurized, all of the vitamin C and enzymes have been killed, very hard for the gut to break down, molecules are developed. And just for purposes of illustration, here is the molecule that ends up getting into the blood. It's been unable to be broken down properly. Body sees it as an enemy, and so what it does, it creates an antibody that will wipe that out. And then it looks over at the pancreas and it sees the beta cells. Do you know what the beta cells look like? So this antibody comes along and starts wiping out the beta cells. Now what I have just described to you is well documented, and you can read about it in the China study, Dr. Colin Campbell. He shows that when children have cow's milk in the first year of life, they have a 60% greater risk of developing type 1 diabetes. So that's why the dairy must stop. Refined sugar. Refined sugar gets the blood sugar level up too high, too fast, and that's when you get the corresponding dump. How many American children wake up to these three? Especially when 30% of most cereals are sugar. Be careful, it'll say sometimes refined carbohydrate, sucrose. They try to find all sorts of ways so that it's not looking at sugar, because David Gillespie's book, Sweet Poison, William Duffy's book, Sugar Blues, and Dr. Yatkin's book, Pure, White and Deadly, all of these books are blowing the whistle on the danger of the refined sugar. So that all has to stop. Something else, in the wheat, when it's bleached white, the bleach is alloxan. And alloxan is the bleach that makes flour. If you refine flour, it's about the colour of the inside of my skin there, but they want it white. So they bleach it with alloxan to make it white, and research in the last 10 years shows that alloxan kills the beta cells in the pancreas. So this breakfast cereal of the nation is actually killing the nation. Number 2, full hydration, so water. And there should be approximately 2 quarts a day. The way to take it is to sip. Your body can handle it. If you're a gardener, you know if you've been away for a week and your plant's dry, you put 16 ounces of water in that plant, where will it all go? But if you put a little bit in, then another little bit in, then another little bit in, that plant will take it. Same with the body. You need to take the water in little by little by little. Yeah? Well, if you're exercising, perspiring more, and larger people do perspire more and lose more, so it is true. So I say approximately. If you're my size, you can go 2 quarts. If you're a little bit bigger, you need to take a little bit more. And that's over 24 hours. And you take the Celtic salt. In my next lecture, I'll be talking about this in detail. 1 crystal on the tongue before every glass of water. It will replace the minerals lost from the day before. Number 3, exercise. Now there is a type of exercise that will get the body up onto a better rate of running, and this type of exercise also increases blood supply to the pancreas. It's called interval training. And interval training, as the name implies, is intervals of high intensity. So high intensity, then recovery for a cycle. And most of the research has been done on exercise bikes, because not everyone can run. And some people are a little bit unsteady on their feet. The exercise bike, you're holding on, and it's a lot easier to go 20 to 30 seconds on an exercise bike than running, because when you're running, you're sort of carrying your body weight. But on an exercise bike, your legs are just going. And then a recovery time of 4 minutes. What's the recovery time? If you're really breathless, and hopefully you will be, that's what you've got to get to, your recovery time might be just sitting and recovering, or it might be just walking slowly. Or if you're cycling, it just might be a nice, slow cycle till you get your breath. And you usually do this, if you're rushed, 3 minutes. If you've got time, 6. That's not long, is it? What's that, 15 minutes a day? That's it. And you have a look at most trainers today, no matter what it before, they're putting their athletes through interval training, because you can get more out of 15 minutes of that than I was going to say 5K jog. What would a 5K jog be? So it'd be half. Yeah, it'd be half that, yeah. That's not much, is it? Now, you know what this high intensity does? You've got to get to the point where you feel like you're dying. Got that? You know you've got to die to live, don't you? Most people are scared of that, and I will also mention this in my next lecture because it's one of the most powerful ways to get the heart strong. Gentle strolls will not do it. It's got to be this high intensity exercise. Isn't that dangerous? It's more dangerous to do a 5K slow jog than to do that. They're little bursts of high intensity with periods of recovery, done for a cycle. If I'm in a rush, I'll do 3. If I've got time, I'll do 6. If you can't get to 20 seconds or even 30 seconds, for me, and I would probably be a little bit of above average fitness, by 20 seconds my body is screaming at me to stop. By 25 seconds it's telling me this is ridiculous. By 30 seconds I feel like I'm nearly dying.
So do you just always do cycling, or like is there anything that you do in place?
I run.
Okay. So you just run really fast?
Yeah, I run as if there's a grizzly bear after me. That's what you've got to get to. In fact, last week I was staying in Milwaukee at a campground there. I was lecturing there, and there was a lake, and there were these steps up from the lake, and my daughter and I, we just ran up the steps, and it was great because it was 30 seconds to get up to the top, running the steps. They're big steps, so one big stride would get us up 1 step. They're sort of in the dirt, bits of wood. That was fantastic. And then we'd walk slowly round the edge till we got our breath back, do some stretches, and then ran for our life again. What that will do for a diabetic, it will increase blood flow to the pancreas. It'll wake up the pancreas, you know, and I think it's another mind blank. But the Bible says that the life of the flesh is in the blood. It's in Leviticus. I think it's 17:22, something around there. The life of the flesh is in the blood. So if you can get more blood into your pancreas, you're getting more oxygen, you're getting more water, you're getting more nutrients, and you're flushing the waste out. That's what the blood does. This does something else. When you start to exercise, your 20-step pathway speeds up, your 8-step pathway speeds up, and remember this is the one that will give 36 units of energy, and it'll only give that sort of energy if you've got enough oxygen going in. Right now, you're breathing in about 500 mil, breathing out 500 mil. When you get to your 30 seconds, you're breathing in 3,600 mil of oxygen, breathing out 3,600 mil of waste, which means every cell in your body can get down to here. And if all your pancreatic cells get down to the 8-step pathway delivering 36 units of oxygen, that pancreas is going to come alive.
So would you just say that the metabolism speeds up?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. What that also does is this cell is now crying out for more fuel, more oxygen, so extra insulin receptor sites actually develop on that cell. So insulin resistance can be turned around in a matter of days when you start to eat like this and exercise with the IT training. That's exciting. Mm-hmm. If they've got a stroke, they've got to get either swimming or exercise bike. And, pardon? Swimming. She will be able to. One lady I knew had a stroke and she was only 50 and they put her through, the physio had her on all these different exercises. You have physiotherapists. But she didn't feel she was getting anywhere, so she went swimming twice a week, and at first all she could do was this to the arm. Then she got it up more and more, and then eventually breaststroke. She said, I'm almost at freestyle. It's just every day. There's a book called The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Doidge, and this is an amazing book, story after story of people who were told they'd never walk again, their arms would never move again, and yet they did. So it's Norman Doidge. It's D-O-I-D-G-E. Dr. Norman Doidge, The Brain That Changes Itself. Swimming is very gentle. Swimming, you're weightless, and swimming, there's no weight on the ankles, knees and hips. So people with ankle, knee and hip problems, you know, the swimming is great. And of course the problem is the chlorine, so ideally search around for low chlorine pools. And the exercise bike is great because you're sitting, and even if you've only got one arm that works, you can sort of lift up the other arm and put it on. And this is what Norman Doidge found. Someone had a stroke, couldn't use the arm. They had electrodes all over it. They were monitoring the nerves and his brain. And they said to him, what's happening with your arm? He said, I cannot move my arm. And as soon as he said that, the nerves to the arm were blocked because he thought it. And then they got him to say, we want you to say now, I'm going to move that arm. And as soon as he said that, the nerves were awakened. Isn't that incredible? Because what science can show now. So if that arm won't move, if you say every day that arm's going to move and you start picturing it moving. And what you can also do is you can help it. You can put it up. And by doing that, you're starting to get the nerves and muscles ready for when it can move. In fact, if you say you can, you will. If you say you can't, you're right. You won't, and science proves that. And tomorrow, the second lecture, I'm going to be talking about the mind and how you can use it. So in here, number 4, there are 5 hours in the night where the batteries are recharged. Early nights. And those 5 hours are between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. When daylight saving stops, those hours are between 9 and 2. So they're the hours in the night where the batteries are being recharged. So no matter what the problem, you've got to be asleep in those hours. A lady emailed me and her son is having trouble with health and he's not sleeping well. I said, tell me what he does in the night if he can't sleep. Well, he wakes up and goes on his computer. That'll wake everything up. So I said, no, don't. You see, your eyes are an extension of your brain. So if you do wake in the night and you can't sleep, you're best to lie there and have soft music on. Or what helps some people is just have, you know, those little caving torches? You just get a little night light that goes from here. It's called caving torches because they cave with them. So it's elastic around there. And you read a book. So your brain knows it's dark because of what's out there, but your eyes are just targeting the letters. And often when they can't stop thinking, by reading. it'll take their mind off all that and it allows them to go off. But absolutely no exposure to technology in the night. And the body gets into habits, so you can retrain it, as I'll show you tomorrow night. You can retrain your brain, you can rewire your brain right up until the day that you die. Now that's quite simple, isn't it? And I have found in a matter of 48 hours, people are having to drop their insulin, their medication, just by implementing this. Yes?
I'm sorry. For someone like me who do not want to lose weight, would you still consider that same exercise?
Yep. Yep. I do it and I don't lose weight. But I eat generous amounts of legumes, nuts and seeds. Not too many nuts, a handful a day. Sorry, a handful a meal. Here's your handful. Not this. Not this.
So with the potatoes, because right now I'm using a lot of potatoes, you would say don't use the potatoes.
No. You don't want to, yeah, I don't know anyone that wants to put on fat. They want to put on muscle. And this will put on muscle. And again, if the lecture yesterday where I looked at the gut, if they're not handling the legumes, they might need to look at digestion. Yes?
I know someone who, and I mentioned it to you yesterday, she's on dialysis and she's a diabetic and that's what caused the insult to the kidneys. But her husband is always complaining about her being too skinny. And so by her increasing, from what I'm getting from you, the nuts, if she increases
Yeah, if this lady who's very thin increases the protein. Now, I had a couple come and she was 38 kilos, he was 48 kilos. I'm 48 kilos. So that would be about 110 pound, is that right? So the man was 110 pound and he's 5'10", I'm 5'2.5", and the lady was 38 kilos. So what would that be, about 80 pound? And they said to me, please don't fast us because the first 2 days are juice fast. I said to them, I got to. They were gorging themselves with carbs to try and put on weight. But their gut wasn't working and it was just going straight through them. I said, I got to. Your stomach, your gut needs a rest. But I said, every 2 hours you'll have a vegetable and fruit juice. And with that vegetable and fruit juice, I'll give you a protein powder. So they were getting 5 protein powders a day, or protein drinks, with their juice. I said, you will not lose weight. They did not lose weight. I saw that man 2 years later, and he was big, strong, and muscular. He said, thank you so much. And how did they put on weight? This. I find it's a balancing diet. I find if people are overweight, they lose it. If they're underweight, they put it on. And if they're the right weight, it just stays the same. Actually, there's one I forgot, and I think that's too low down there, so I'm going to put it here, number 6. Breakfast like a king. Lunch like a queen. And, yes, there's the queen. And dinner like a pauper. And Dan, who's stopped his insulin or reduced it by 90%, that's how he was eating. And what are diabetics told to eat? Every 2 hours. Then the stomach can't digest properly because it's overworked. It was like this couple, they were gorging themselves. They put on weight by only eating breakfast and lunch. Now, some people who are working strenuously hard, some people who can't eat a lot, they may need an evening meal. And the best evening meal would be that protein drink I showed you, or just a vegetable soup. Definitely no carbs at night.
Can you tell us what your kingly breakfast looks like?
What a kingly breakfast looks like. Let me tell you what I usually have for breakfast. I usually juice grapefruit and put chia seed in it and maybe chop up pawpaw in that. I'm not a diabetic. If I was a diabetic, maybe I'd do strawberries. And then I would have about 7 almonds and about, 4 or 5 Brazil nuts. And then I have a slice of sourdough spelt toast with olive oil on it, and then avocado on it, and red lentils all over that. Now that breakfast is high in fibre. Everything's got fibre. generous amounts of protein in my legumes, my chia seed, my nuts, and good amounts of fat. Olive oil on my toast, about a teaspoon of olive oil, and then avocado. What about lunch? This is what I usually have for lunch. Salad, big salad, and then I have, let me tell you what I had for lunch today. I had a big salad today, and I had a ginger and tahini dressing. That was very nice. And there were rice noodles with vegetables, and then there was garbanzos and green peas in a sauce, and then there was some baked tofu. So I see fantastic amounts of protein there, lots of veggies, a little bit of carb in the rice noodles, and your salad, lots of fibre. What did I have for tea last night? Nothing. If I did have something for tea, it might be a piece of fruit, might be an avocado. An avocado is an excellent evening meal for a diabetic. If you're still hungry, eat 2 avocados. Isn't it high in fat? Yeah, isn't that good news? Good evening again. We're going to be talking about a very important part of our body now. It's our heart. No wonder the proverb says, keep the heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. So that's 2 things we're talking about there, the heart and the issues of life. The issues of life, of course, is the blood. And the heart loves it when the blood is nice and thin. And we don't need to thin the blood with rat poison, warfarin. And we don't need to thin the blood with aspirin, because the most recent research out shows that it causes brain bleeds. And what are brain bleeds? There's a big contributing factor to Alzheimer's. No, there are ways to keep the blood thin. So let's begin by looking at blood thinners. And I'll tell you a story to illustrate. I had a man ring me up, and he was 45. He said, Barbara, he said, I'm wondering if you can help me. I'm on warfarin. Because you know warfarin is rat poison, and it causes the rats to bleed to death. But they don't give human beings quite so much to cause them to bleed to death. But watch out if you cut yourself, because it's very hard to stop bleeding. And a doctor will never operate on you while you're on warfarin, because you'll bleed to death on the table. Bit scary, isn't it? He said, I'm on warfarin and it's just knocking me about, something terrible. I said, why have they got you on warfarin? He said, I've got a clot in my leg. I said, what happened? See, you've always got to put the detective hat on. He said, well, I was playing tennis and I moved a certain way and my muscle tore. And he said it was painful for days. I eventually went to the doctor. He did a scan and there was a clot there. And the doctor said, we've just discovered you've got a clotting disease. And he said, well, if I've got a clotting disease, won't clots be everywhere? Well, they did a full scan on and there was only a clot there. You know who I think the clot is. But, you know, there are good plumbers, bad plumbers, good painters, not so good painters. And it's same in every profession. There are some very good doctors, absolutely. So you just got to source out the good ones, like you do with anything you do in your house, and especially in this house. I said to him, tell me what happened around this, because you don't just twist your leg and your muscle tears and you get a clot. Well, he said, I wasn't drinking any water and I was having 2 quarts of Coca-Cola a day, and I was having 3 coffees a day, and I was working 14-hour days, and I wasn't eating very well, and I was drinking too much alcohol at night. Aha. Can you see cell integrity was drastically diminished, so when he twisted a certain way, the cells just couldn't hold it together, and his blood was already so clumped from all of those things, it just clumped in one section there. And now the doctor had him on warfarin. He said, I've been to the health food shop. He said, I'm drinking water now. And he said, I'm not having any Coke. I've stopped the alcohol. He said, I've stopped all the caffeine. I said, great. He said, how can I keep the blood thin? So this is what I told him. He had to have 2 to 2.5 quarts of water a day. I said, if you're working on the job site and you're perspiring a lot, you might need to have to get up to 3. And I said, and the Celtic salt. Now, Celtic salt contains 82 minerals. And those minerals help to get the water inside the cell to help to hydrate you. I'll give you the whole story on that in a minute, but first of all, I want to finish the story of Tom. We'll call him Tom. And then I said cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is a remarkable herb. It opens up the blood vessels, it thins the blood, it can even repair damaged arterial walls. So he was having cayenne pepper. Well, this is what I advised. I said start with 1/4 teaspoon in a little bit of water 3 times a day. I said as you get used to it, you can get up to 1/2 teaspoon. Garlic. Have it in your food. Have it on everything. Ginger. You can finely grate the ginger, pour boiling water on it and drink it as a tea. I said every time your wife cooks a stir fry or ginger. And omega-3. Omega-3 is a blood thinner. And the best sources are your ground flax, your chia, and your walnuts. So he began to implement that. He rang me up a week later. He said, do you think I could stop the warfarin? He said, it's knocking me around something terrible. The side effects are terrible. I can't work properly and I've got to work. He said, I can't sleep properly. I said, well, I can't tell you what to do. Only you or your doctor have authority over your medication, but I can tell you what I do, and I don't usually have to tell people that. He said, do you think I'm safe? I said, if you're doing all that, that will keep the blood thin. You are safe. A week later, so now we're looking about 3 weeks since the clot was discovered, he went back to the doctor. He told the doctor he'd stopped the warfarin. The doctor hit the roof. See, most doctors, some doctors do, but most doctors don't know that. They've had no experience with that. And most doctors know that if the person doesn't do all that, if he were to keep eating the way he ate and drank, he'd need the warfarin. He said to the doctor, when the doctor had stopped yelling at him, just answer me one question, mate, because that's what we say in Australia. He said, will the warfarin break my clot down? Doctor was silent. Because do you know it won't? All it does is thin the blood. It does not break the clot down. The doctor looked down. He knew it won't break a clot down. And then the man said, I want a scan on that leg. And the doctor said, there is no way that clot would be gone in 3 weeks. The man said, if you don't do a scan, I'll go to someone who will. So the doctor did. The clot was gone. This not only thins the blood, it will also break down the clots. Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says God gave herbs for the service of man. They're there to serve you. They're your best blood thinners. Now you could have 5 gallons of water, 2 cups of salt, 2 cups of cayenne pepper. You see what I'm saying? You could absolutely overload yourself with that and your blood would not get so thin you would bleed to death. Isn't that remarkable? Because of Psalm 104 verse 14. God gave herbs for the service of man. In fact, medicine calls it synergism. They work with the needs of the body. Herbs come in and say, where would you like me? What would you like me to do? Drugs come in and say, get out of my way, I've got a job to do whether you need it or not. And it is true, drugs have saved lives. I'm not disputing that. But we don't need them every day. And in the majority of cases, we can actually prevent ever having to go to the point where we have to get them. Now we are told that cholesterol causes heart disease. Am I right?
Yes.
Well, I want to show you what cholesterol is. Your liver makes cholesterol. So there's liver. Looks a little bit like Napoleon's hat. And 80% of the cholesterol that your liver makes is made from glucose. And 20% of the cholesterol that the liver makes is made from fat. It's not the butter on the bread. It's the bread under the butter. That's the problem. Do you know, fat has been blamed as the problem because of its association. Because it sat on the bread. It was actually the bread underneath. Woo. So let me show you cholesterol. We've got HDL, high density lipoprotein. High density lipoprotein is called the good cholesterol because it carries away excess. We'll call it the carrier. And then we've got low density lipoprotein, called the bad guy, am I right? But remember this, God doesn't make anything bad, does he? Now, LDL has a few roles. One is it's the repairer and the rebuilder. Now, it does something else because there is one organ in the body that loves fat and loves cholesterol. It's the brain. And what LDL does is it delivers fat to the brain. Did you know that breast milk is high in cholesterol? And babies don't die from heart disease. And did you know that especially the first 3 days where you've got that thick, creamy substance, incredibly high in cholesterol? Do you know why the milk is so creamy and rich at first? Is for that developing brain. The brain won't develop without it.
A person who's on statin drugs, would that
I'll get to the statin drugs. The Framingham Heart Study, have you heard of it? The Framingham Heart Study, very famous study. It's done in the little town of Framingham. Over 30 years, they've been studying about 20,000 people. It's a very reputable study. They found that people with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's. A moment's silence for you to digest that one. Did you get that? Framingham. Frammington. Framington. Framingham Heart Study. People with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's. Let me continue with the cholesterol story. So here is the blood vessel. And because of its low density, HDL is always found on the edge. LDL, low density on the edge. Because of its high density, HDL is found in the middle. Now, if someone's eating a lot of sugar, especially sugar and milk, do you know that it causes scarring on the wall, weakening on the wall? Did you hear that? The sugar, especially the sugar in the milk. If they're smoking cigarettes, 4,000 chemicals in a cigarette causes a deterioration of the wall. Mercury damages the cells, causing a deterioration in the lining. Mold is toxic. It can poke holes. And mercury, I think I did mercury. Who's going to plug up the hole? The repairer and the deliverer. Repairer and rebuilder. Plugs up the hole. Otherwise, you'd bleed into the tissues and probably bleed to death. Now, what's supposed to happen is the person's supposed to eat highly nourishing food, high fibre, all the vegetables and their minerals, generous proteins. The best burning fuel, protein-wise, is your vegetarian protein. Did you know that meat protein is only 52% fuel, 48% waste? That's not a very profitable fuel, is it? and it's an acid waste. Dr. Colin Campbell, in his book, The China Study, he defines that. So we want the person to eat nourishing food, high fibre, all the minerals, proteins, healthy fats, and then the body repairs and builds up that hole. And then HDL comes along. Remember what his job is? Carrier. And he carries away the excess. Now that's what's supposed to happen. When Dr. Agatha Thrash was alive, she had a health retreat called Uchee Pines down in the southern states. And she tells the story, well, she did tell the story of a lady who lived with them for a while. She'd been a chronic alcoholic. She came to their health retreat. She had 80% blockage of her arteries. That means huge build-up. She went on the vegetarian diet. She started exercising. 10 months later, she had a massive stroke and brain bleed, and she died because of the damage from the years of alcoholism. Agatha Thrash did a post-mortem on this woman, and her arteries were clean. 10 months from 80% blockage to clean. That's incredible, isn't it? Now let's say the person doesn't get out of the mouldy house. Let's say the person continues to have their cereal with all the sugar and the milks, the combination of the milks and sugars, and the coffee with the milk and the sugar in it, and the still smoking, mercury in the mouth. The holes keep coming. So what's happening in the lining? Artery. It's nearly spelt the same. What's happening? Okay, there's no nutrition, they can't properly heal. And who gets blamed for all the problems? Is the cholesterol. So how do we clean it up? And cholesterol is not causing heart disease. It's what causes it to be there. There's a book called The Serial Killer. And I want to read to you, there's a chapter in here on cholesterol. If the National Cholesterol Education Program was truly concerned about our health, they would be mounting a vigorous nationwide campaign to reduce the American addiction to sugar and refined carbohydrates, which are the real culprits in causing low HDL and oxidized LDL. They're the real culprits. And Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, he's a British cardiologist, he says for the first time, normal levels of a normal vital body substance is called a disease. Normal levels of a normal vital body substance is called disease. Now, I'm just going to give you a few books here that you can get and their titles. The Cholesterol Controversy by Dr. Edward Pinnicky. There is no scientific evidence to show that high blood cholesterols are the cause of heart disease, or that lowering cholesterol, if such a thing is possible, will prevent heart troubles of any kind. It doesn't stop the heart attack. Here's another one, The Cholesterol Conspiracy by Dr. Russell Smith. Saturated fat and cholesterol in the diet are not the cause of coronary heart disease. This myth is the greatest scientific deception of this century, perhaps of any century. Another one, The Cholesterol Myth by Uffe Ravenstock. He's also a doctor. A Swedish medical doctor exposes the fallacy that saturated fat and cholesterol cause heart disease. Last one, The Cholesterol Con, The Great Cholesterol Con by Malcolm Kendrick. He's the British cardiologist. This well-documented and entertaining book by an English cardiologist confirms the nagging fear that the current cholesterol obsession is utterly misguided. Is that enough? Incredible. Incredible. It's not cholesterol.
Who's the author of The Serial Killer?
Alan Watson. He does a very good job at defining that. What it says here is the unintended consequences of the low-fat diet, which is incredibly dangerous. It's high triglyceride levels, which is high fat store from the high carbohydrate diet. 2 weeks ago, I was running a health retreat in Alabama, and there was a woman there who was 69. She looked 50. She's very well kept. She said, I have been she got a doctorate in nutrition and dietetics. So she was trained at the university 30, 40 years ago. She said, in my training, we were told that under 300 is perfectly safe cholesterol levels. Did you get that? They've changed it. Why have they changed it? The pharmaceutical companies got them to change it. Because if they can get someone on cholesterol-lowering medications, how long is a person told they're on it for? Life. If you're under 300, you're safe. Did you hear that? Already they dropped it to 200. Now they're dropping it down to 160. They've done a... So don't believe them. Now, two of the most common cholesterol-lowering medications are Lipitor and Crestor. How do they work? Well, they block the pathway in the liver that the liver uses to make cholesterol. And that same pathway is what the liver uses to make coenzyme Q10. What's coenzyme Q10? Your heart protective enzyme. So a person has a heart attack, goes on Lipitor or Crestor, can increase their risk because now they haven't got coenzyme Q10. Are you ready for the side effects of Lipitor and Crestor? Memory loss, Alzheimer's, dementia, muscle wasting, and they've just added another one, breast cancer. Because our sex hormones are made from cholesterol. Did everyone hear that? This man who's been on cholesterol-lowering medication for a long time now has erectile dysfunction. Sex and memory loss. Anyone interested? Give me a break. One lady said, I cannot stop. I said, why not? She said, the doctor said I will die. Do you know you will not die? And personally, I'd rather die than spend my latter years with memory loss and dementia. And as you'll see tomorrow in our lecture on the mind, God never, ever designed that this brain deteriorate. So one of the biggest contributing factors is these statin drugs. They are dangerous. I've got some good news. If you're on cholesterol-lowering medication, you can stop today with no side effects. To blame cholesterol is like blaming the fire trucks for the fire. Well, they're always at the fire. So they must have caused it. Can you see that? So how can we strengthen the heart? We've just looked at what can thin the blood. So let's make a list. Number 1, exercise. Nothing strengthens the heart like exercise. What type of exercise? IT training. Periods of high intensity, periods of recovery. Won't that hurt the heart? No, it will not hurt the heart. It will wake up the heart. And then recovery. And this is done for a cycle. Dr. Al Sears, you might have heard of him. He's got a book called PACE, Progressive Acceleration of Cardiopulmonary Exertion. Sorry. And he shows in there, he's got story after story of people who are often men, 45 years of old, does a 5K jog every day. What did we work out the 5K jog would be? That would be 2.5 miles, would it be 2.75 miles? Keels over, dies of a heart attack. Have you read stories like that? He keels over, has a heart attack because what's happening is lactic acid is building up in his body. And with the high intensity, say 20 to 30 seconds high intensity, with a recovery of about 4 minutes, Alcee gives the story of a lady who did 7 seconds high intensity, then she needed 15 minutes to recover. Your recovery time is your indicator of your fitness. The good news is it won't always be like that. That's why he says progressive. It is progressive. If you take 15 minutes to recover today, you won't take 15 minutes to recover tomorrow. So as you do it, you'll find your recovery time gets less and less and less. And what he shows was inside the cell. So I'm going to take you inside the cell to show exactly what happens. Remember, the glucose goes in and there's a 20-step pathway. And that 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. The end result of that 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. Pyruvate gets fed into the powerhouse, called the powerhouse because this 8-step pathway gives us 36 units of energy. This is the oxygen pathway. This is the no oxygen pathway. Now, when someone starts to speed up the body, let's say they're getting to even halfway through the 30 seconds. 20-step speeds up. 8-step speeds up. But there's a rate-setting enzyme in there. This one is always faster. And even when the whole lot speeds up, the 20-step pathway is always going to be faster. So when someone is really moving, more pyruvate is being made than can be fed into that powerhouse, so the body stores it over here as lactic acid. You've heard of lactic acid? Now, the most amazing thing I think about this interval program is that when you're in recovery time, now that can be cycling slowly, swimming slowly, walking downhill, or maybe you're just standing still getting your breath back. In recovery time, your liver converts the lactic acid back to pyruvate and feeds it in the powerhouse. This means that when you're in recovery time, and it could be just standing still, your cells are burning just as much fuel as when you're running for your life. Isn't that good news? So what this recovery does, it prevents the build-up of the lactic acid. So the recovery time is not an excuse because you can't go any further. It's actually essential for the mopping up of your lactic acid. That's the most exciting thing, I think, about the interval training. And that's why they're finding that this interval training is having a better effect on the heart, the lungs, the muscle, because we are made up of these things here. Every cell muscle is that. Here's a cell. I draw it as if there's one per cell, but in the muscle cell you can have hundreds. They're called the mitochondria. And the more you exercise, the more they develop. Isn't that incredible? That's 36 units of energy, 36 units of energy, 36 units of... Oof. Incredible. Yeah?
So instead of running, like doing 3 miles or 2.5 or whatever, you should run in intervals? Is that...
That's right. When I was a little girl, I was a girl guide. And we used to do Scout's pace, running from one telegraph pole to the next, walking the next, running the next. It's basically interval training. You look at every sport, interval training, basketball, throw the ball, everyone's walking back to their spot. Soccer, ran, kick the ball, and everyone's walking back to their spot. You look at children playing hopscotch, skipping. You look on the African fields, no animal jogs. They either run for it or they rest. So the interval training is the most powerful way to do it. I think it's exciting news because most people say to me, I don't have time for exercise. You don't have time not to exercise. And everyone has 15 minutes. Everyone has 15 minutes. In his book Pace, he says progressive acceleration. You are moving. In fact, when Michael and I are doing it, we're not talking. Even in the first bit of recovery time, we might talk for 3 minutes. I used to do a 2K exercise, 2.5K, half an hour. Now I just do 15 minutes, which I just love because it gives me more time at home to work. I just do that little nugget every morning. I have an appointment at 6 o'clock every morning. I have an appointment to do this. No matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing it. If you can't run, you get the exercise bike. Can't exercise bike, swim. You got to find out how you can do it. The rebounder, you know, the little trampoline, that's very good for the lymphatic system. So excessive acceleration of cardiopulmonary, that's what this does. It strengthens the heart. And pulmonary gets those lungs stretched. In this Framingham Heart Study, they found that by the age of 50, most people had lost 40% lung capacity because they don't do their interval training. If you do interval training, you will never lose lung capacity, and if you've lost it, you can regain it. They found by the age of 80, 60% of people, by the age of 80, nearly everybody had lost 60% lung capacity. Woo. And you ask people in their 60s, 70s, 80s what their energy level's like. I just got no energy. How do you get it? Exercise. No, you don't understand. I got no energy. Well, you just start. You can start small, but you've got to start. Little by little by little. And you'll be amazed how when you start exercising, you're not working on addition, you're working on multiplication. Yes?
The rebounder, if I wanted to use that, how would I do it?
With the rebounder, you just jig up and down, but you can get a real moving along with that one. Very good, as I said, for your lymphatic system. So the interval training is essential no matter what your heart's condition is. It'll strengthen it. Number 2 is high fibre. There's all your vegetables, all your protections in those vegetables. Generous amounts of protein and healthy fats. Sorry, but you can't listen to the Heart Foundation. Low carbs. And number 3, there's a no. No wheat. Have you heard this before?
Yeah.
You see, the hybridized wheat, when it gets into the body rarely is able to handle it. And whenever something goes into the body that you can't handle, guess what rises? Blood pressure. No dairy. Cow's milk is great for baby calves. No refined sugar. No caffeine. When the human body takes caffeine, it creates a bit of a crisis, which gets the blood pressure up. Number 4, early nights. This is when your heart is resting and reviving. Remember, between 10 and 3 a.m. They're your hours of power. Number 5, blood thinners. So I won't define them again because I already have. Number 6 is keep well hydrated. When you're dehydrated, it causes little blood capillary networks to shut down, which increases pressure on the heart. So 2 to 3 quarts of water daily. Salt. Let me give you the salt story. And in this story, you will find out why the doctor says no salt. I agree, but let's define the salt. Seawater. Seawater contains 92 minerals. Seawater from the sea. Now, of those 92 minerals, 50% is chloride and 30% is sodium. So what man does is he scoops up the first crystals formed, which is sodium chloride, bleaches it white, puts aluminium in it so that it runs freely. There's your table salt. Table salt, sometimes they call it sea salt. If it's white and runs freely, be cautious. And what it does is you've got a bilayered membrane around the cell. And what it does, it causes sodium levels in the cell to rise. That causes pressure by expanding the cell. There's your high blood pressure. And so doc says, stop the salt. So the person stops the salt and then sodium levels go too low. That causes the cell to swell again. In fact, if that cell has no sodium in it, it explodes. Sodium is the third most vital element needed for life. And we need to take sodium into our body the way it's found in nature, which is seawater. So Celtic salt, it contains 82 minerals. Celtic salt has sodium chloride in its balanced form. In fact, if you were to inject sodium chloride straight into the veins of a person, they would die. They need all the other minerals to buffer them. Now, Celtic salt has 3 magnesiums. And in blood pressure, magnesium is very important because magnesium relaxes the heart at rest. So the 3 magnesiums are magnesium chloride, magnesium bromide, and magnesium sulfate. Magnesium is a water-hungry molecule. And when you put a crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue, maybe crunch it a bit, get water and drink it down, already in the mouth, the mucous membranes are absorbing those minerals, the magnesium. It takes the magnesium to the cell, and that magnesium pulls the water inside the cell. It's the quickest way to hydrate a body. One lady said, look at my ankles, they're so swollen, I've got too much water. I said, the water's not inside the cell. It's on the outside of the cell. We need to get that water inside the cell. One lady said, I can't drink water, I'm visiting the bathroom all the time. I said, you need the Celtic salt to get the water inside the cell. Yeah?
If you're in the hospital and like you're dehydrated and they give you all of that saline that you're
Yeah.
bloated.
Yeah. They need it in the balanced form. Do you know that in the war, in the Navy, if a man needed a blood transfusion, they would transfuse him with seawater? Seawater is called an isotonic solution because it is the exact same mineral balance and proportion as is found in the human body. There's a book called The Calcium Life, fascinating book on minerals by Dr. Robert Thompson. And he says seawater is the clearest indication of a creator God, because that water is the exact mineral balance and proportion as is found in the body. No, I'm not suggesting you drink it. We should drink pure water, but you can get dehydrated seawater. It's called Celtic salt. Why aren't there 92 minerals? Well, some minerals are in such pico proportions, barely measurable, that when the dehydration process happens, a few are lost. But hey, 82 is a lot closer. Himalayan salt also has 82 minerals. It also is quite a nice balance, but it doesn't quite have the magnesiums. And if you have Celtic salt and have Himalayan salt, the Celtic salt is wet. Have you noticed? Moist. That's because of the magnesium. Magnesium's a water-hungry molecule. And it pulls the water inside the cell. So Celtic salt can actually get the blood pressure down. Yes?
So just like you said, if you were on a statin drug and you stopped and did what you said, nothing would happen. If you were on a water pill and you did this and you stopped, anything happened?
Well, the Celtic salt can help to get the water down, but there is a herb, by the way, which is a diuretic. It's dandelion. And dandelion works by stimulating the kidneys to release more fluid, whereas most diuretics irritate the kidneys. God gave herbs for the service of man. That's right. So it's very, very important. In fact, it's going to get a whole unit by itself, Celtic salt. If you're used to no salt, start lightly.
Do you think that kidney, that person who I was talking about who's on dialysis, do you think that dandelion would be beneficial?
Yes, yeah. And for dialysis, the coconut water is very good, because the coconut water, which is the water from the immature coconut, it again has that perfect mineral balance.
How much dandelion?
Now, the best way is to buy it in a tablet form, because then it's concentrated. And I can't off the top of my head give you an amount, but usually they say 1 tablet 3 times a day. Now, there is a herb, so we're coming to number 8 here, specific for heart, that strengthens the heart. If the blood pressure's low, it'll bring it up. If it's high, it'll bring it down. Because remember Psalm 104 verse 14, God gave herbs for the service of man. It's called the hawthorn berry. And I've seen many people get off their blood pressure medication and go on the hawthorn berry by implementing this. We had a guy to our program. His name was Henry. He was a retired judge. He was about 67 when he came to us. He was on 6 medications, medication to lower his cholesterol, to lower his blood sugar, to blood thinning medication, high blood pressure medication, medication for gout, and medication for stomach ulcers, 6 medications. He was carrying probably about 40 kilos excess weight. That would be about 85 pounds. I said to him, "Are you interested in coming off your medication?" He said, "No, thank you very much. I'm happy with my medication. I always respect everyone's choice." But I put him on the hawthorn berry. We made the tea up, and he drank a litre of the tea every day, because you can buy the dried berries. End of the week, he said, "I'm feeling very good. Thank you very much for the week." And he left. 4 months later, I got a phone call. He said, "Barbara, can I visit? I want to get more hawthorn berries. I want to get my friend off his medication." When I answered the door, I didn't recognize Henry. He had lost 20 kilos in 4 months. What's 20 kilos? That's 80 pounds, is that right? 40. So he'd lost 20 kilos, which was over 40 pounds, in 4 months. He looked so good. The puffiness had gone out of his face. He said, "I can do my coat up now." He said, "Sit down, I'll have a few more stories for you." I said, "I went to the doctor. He took my blood pressure, and he went up to walk out of the room." And Henry said, "What are you doing?" He said, "The machine's broken." He said, why do you say the machine's broken? He said, well, your blood pressure's 165 on 100. By the way, that was on his medication. He said, this machine says that your blood pressure now is 120 on 80. The machine's broken. He said, no, that's my blood pressure now. The doctor took him off all his medication because his blood was getting so thin. His cholesterol had gone down. His blood pressure had gone down. His blood thinning was perfect. He had no more gout and no more stomach ulcers. Now, it's a very interesting story because he chose to stay on his medication. But he changed his lifestyle to the point where everything came back to normal and the doctor had to take him off his medication or his blood would get too thin, his blood pressure would get too low and he'd start passing out. Can you see that? So it is our job to convince our doctor that we can do it without the drugs. To prove it. I said, Henry, tell me what you have for breakfast. He said, I have a big spaghetti bowl of chopped fruit, low glycemic, whole grain cereal, maybe it's oats, maybe it's millet, maybe it's quinoa, coconut cream. Did everyone hear that? 40 pounds lost on coconut cream. Fat doesn't make you fat. Chia seed, ground flax on top, and a slice of sourdough spelt with avocado on top. That's not a light diet, is it? He said, I don't eat again till lunch. Lunch, I have a big salad. I have some vegetables baked or steamed or stir-fried, some form of protein, maybe lentils, maybe lima beans, and I might have another slice of sourdough toast with avocado, not a light diet. And I'll never forget what he said. Very decisive man. He would have been a good judge. He said, I do not eat again till breakfast. He doesn't need to. So 40 pounds lost in 4 months on that diet. He said, I drink my water between my meals. And he said, and I said to him, tell me about your exercise program. He couldn't get those results without the exercise. He said, I find I can walk another block every week. Interesting answer. As he gets fitter, as his muscles get stronger, his heart gets stronger, the weight goes, he can go further with less effort in less time. Yes?
If you take the coconut shreds, the desiccated coconut, and you blend it and make coconut milk, would that suffice for the coconut oil?
That's not coconut oil. But all form of coconuts are fine. Yes?
As far as digestion goes, with the Celtic salt, the chloride, would that help like with somebody who has...
It's a very good question. Hydrochloric acid is made from chloride. So can you see on a salt-free diet, a person cannot digest properly. So that's another reason why the salt is good.
So you would take that for somebody who's not digesting properly with that tea that you mentioned yesterday?
Yes. Yep. So what we do at our retreat, we do 2 teaspoons of the dried berry to 1 cup of water. And because it's a berry, it needs a gentle simmer.
You said dry berry?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And 1 quart a day. Now, as the blood pressure comes down, as the weight comes down and everything comes back to normal, you can stop the hawthorn berry. Can you stop the diet? Well, that's actually how I eat. It's a fantastic way to live, to eat. And I don't like the word diet, just look at it as a food program. Very similar to the program I gave for diabetes, isn't it? Yes. Same program for weight loss. It's actually a balancing program. Yes?
Is it okay once in a while to have a cup of tea? I love tea.
Okay, cup of tea. I used to love tea, but I don't drink it anymore. If I want a cup of tea, I'll have peppermint or I'll have ginger. You'll be amazed how your tastes do change. So I want to thank you for your attention tonight. Tomorrow night we're going to look at the acid-alkaline balance, which is another aspect of food, of eating. And the second lecture tomorrow night, we're going to be looking at the mind. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.